Okay, our next dish is going to be pork chops campagnola. Campagnola is an Italian word, it means from the woods. Basically what we did, we've got a nice double cut pork chop, which we're going to use. I'm going to lightly dredge it in flour. Got my pan here, which should be ready to go. I'm going to use a tiny bit of oil just to pan sear that. Now we're going to do with that pork cutlet, pork chop as soon as we get it. Gonna lightly season it. A little pepper, a little salt, and a little oregano. Now, you see that pan smoking, we're gonna put that pork chop right into it. While this is searing off, take some potatoes that I sliced. And I'll put them into our deep fryer. Got our pork chops starting to cook. Just use a little bit more. What we're doing is we're sealing, the flour seals in all the juices and the flavors. By pan searing it, we're searing it at a high heat real fast. So it builds a coating on it and locks in all the juices. Meantime, took the liberty of heating a second pan, because what we're going to do is once this pork chop is just about ready, we're going to put it into the other pan. In this pan, we're going to add some of our fine Moraccio imported olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. Okay. We're going to trade places. Lower that heat there. Get this nice and hot. And what we're going to do here, we got some fresh garden vegetables. You'll notice I have diced onions. They're not regular Spanish onions. I like to use red onions just for simply a sweeter taste it's going to give to our dish. Take our pork chop over. All right, we let these onions start caramelizing a bit. While we're doing that, I'm going to take about 4 or 5 pieces of sun-dried tomatoes, and I'm gonna dice them up into like 1/4-inch pieces. All right, that's all set. Now we got our onions starting to get its color. Our next step, some fresh red bell pepper. Let that incorporate a little bit. Meantime, I'm going to start seasoning. 2 pinches of salt, 1 pinch of pepper, a little bit diced up leek, now as that starts to cook, I'm going to add yet another vegetable, which is our cremini mushroom, which is like a baby portobello. A little bit heartier, and with the pork, it's going to give it a more robust taste. I'll let that cook up a little bit more. Meantime, we'll check our pork chop. That's very slowly searing off. Now you notice I'm putting the vegetables in, didn't just dump them in all one time, because you want the vegetables to have that sort of crunchiness still in them. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the vegetables that take a little bit longer to cook. Now I'm going to add some green squash. And the last thing I'm going to add to this ingredient is my sun-dried tomatoes. Now this dish, when I first started doing it, was actually done with a veal chop. I went to this restaurant that'll remain nameless, and I had this veal chop dish that was unbelievable. And I liked it, so I basically had to do something to make it my own. So I took a pork chop dish, and realistically in Italian, this dish should be called pork chop arrubata. Arrubata in Italian means stolen, because with the difference of adding pork and a couple other ingredients that I threw into it, I basically took a dish that I loved at another restaurant, which, thank you, and I incorporated it into my own. And that's the secret of being a chef. You can take somebody else's dish, change 2-3 ingredients, and guess what? It's your own. I added some Eccodomani Pinot Grigio. Now I'm adding some Elmo Pio Chianti. We are gonna finish it off with a little bit of olive oil. This 300-year-old estate imported Italian olive oil. Then my next step, I deglazed all my vegetables. I'm gonna add a little bit of demi-glaze. And demi-glaze is basically comprised of veal bones. It's a slow cooked stock, and a little bit of chicken stock. Now, got all that together. We're just gonna top it off and let it simmer a little bit more. Meantime, I'm gonna, my imaginary deep fryer, I don't know if I fooled you or not, take my sliced potatoes, which we deep fried, and we need sort of like a chip. Like I said before, garnish is everything. We've got our dish. We're gonna layer our potatoes. The bottom of our dish. Like so. And see how our dish is doing. We're about a minute or two away from plating this up. Meantime, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and how I got involved in this crazy business. As I grew up with a little passion of the art of cooking, and I always Sunday mornings woke up to that smell of porchetta cooking on the stove, and it's the homemade meatballs. And you know, when I was younger, instead of going out and playing, I was home helping my mom cook. And I found that as I grew older, I just had a knack for putting flavors together. So as time went on, I tried other fields, and I always came back to the culinary industry. And thus, here I am. All right, and with that, our pork chop should be done. We'll take our pork chop, layer it over top our potatoes. Now we'll just incorporate all our nice vegetables, which they're nice. And we're gonna layer that goodness over the top. And this is like a 3-course meal in itself. I mean, you got your starch, you got your vegetable, you got your protein. Now we'll take our juice, pour it over, voila. Pork chop, campagnola, arrubata, however you want to call it. It's my dish.